If you gas out too soon on runs or rucks, your legs always feel heavy, or you don't recover well between sessions, you're probably skipping out on zone 2. Zone 2 training is the single best way to build endurance, recover faster, and last longer under stress. And if you're not doing it, you're making your endurance training harder than it needs to be. Let's break it down. Most guys think going hard all the time is what's going to make them better, but that's not how endurance works. If you push too hard too often, the body never builds a solid base for endurance. That means you'll get tired faster, take longer to recover, and feel stuck at the same level. The secret to running faster over long distances, rucking longer without breaking down, and feeling light on those runs is including low to moderate intensity conditioning like zone 2. Now, what is zone 2 training? Zone 2 is just staying within 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate, and it should feel easy to moderate, not exhausting. When you train in zone 2, your body gets more efficient at using fat as a fuel source instead of relying on carbohydrates or glycogen, which get depleted much faster than our fat stores. This helps you go longer without zapping your energy. For reference, on average, we can store up to about 2,000 calories worth of glycogen in our system. With fat, even for a relatively lean athlete, we can store upwards of 100,000 calories of energy. This means when we increase our body's efficiency at using fat as a fuel source, we access a lot more energy than an over-reliance on glycogen. Zone 2 training also increases what's called the mitochondria in your muscle. You can think of the mitochondria as your body's little energy factories. The more you have, the longer you can keep going before you hit a wall. Now, how much zone 2 should you be doing? Most of your endurance training, about 80% of your total miles on a weekly basis, should come from low to moderate intensity conditioning or zone 2. At a minimum, do 2 to 3 zone 2 sessions per week, each between 30 to 60 minutes. Now, zone 2 takes time and consistency, but once you build that base, I promise you'll recover faster and perform better. Next, let's talk about how to find your zone 2 heart rate range. The best and most reliant way to train in zone 2 is to keep your heart rate in the right range. And there are two main methods that you can use. The first one is the 220 minus age formula, and this is the simplest way to estimate your zone 2 heart rate. All you're going to do is subtract your age from 220 to find your estimated maximum heart rate. Then multiply that number by 0.60 for the bottom range of zone 2 and 0.70 for the top range. So for example, if you're 30 years old, you can take 220 minus 30, which gives you 190. Then multiply that 190 by 0.60 to get 114, which is going to be the bottom end of your zone 2 range. And then 190 by 0.70, which is going to give you 133 or the top of that zone 2 range. Now, if you're a 30-year-old man and you use this simple formula, your zone 2 heart rate range is going to be 114 to 133. This method is simple and works for most people, but if you want a more accurate number, there's a better way, and that is called the Karvonen method. The Karvonen method is a better way to estimate your zone 2 range because it factors in your resting heart rate and relative fitness levels. So if you wear a Garmin, Whoop, Apple Watch, Oura Ring, or a similar device, it likely tracks your resting heart rate over time and gives you an average resting heart rate. And here's how you can use that to dial in your zone 2 range with the Karvonen method. First, find your resting heart rate. For this example, we'll use 60 beats per minute. Next is to calculate something called your heart rate reserve. And for this, all we're going to do is subtract our resting heart rate from our maximum heart rate. So again, if it's a 30-year-old male, we can take 220 minus your age, gives you 190. And then for a 60 beats per minute resting heart rate, we can do 190 minus 60. And this gives us a heart rate reserve of 130. Now, to find your zone 2 range, we want to multiply that 130 by 0.60 for the bottom end, then add back in your resting heart rate. That will be the bottom end of our zone 2. Then all we do for the top end is take that same 130, multiply it by 0.70, and then add our resting heart rate back in. So for this example of a 30-year-old male with a resting heart rate of 60, the low end of the zone 2 is going to be 138, and the top end is going to be 151. And you can see by including our resting heart rate, the zone 2 range actually becomes a little bit higher, which means we can increase the speed and make sure we're more dialed in with those zone 2 sessions. So which method should you use? If you don't have your resting heart rate and just want a quick formula, you can do the 220 minus age formula, which is going to be fine all day long. If you have your resting heart rate and you want to dial in that range a little bit more, including it, then you can use the Karvonen method. But at the end of the day, if you don't use a heart rate monitor at all, we can use some physiological markers. Number one is going to be the talk test. And with these runs, it should be easy enough to maintain a conversation. So say 18 to 20 words without gasping for breath. We should also be able to nasal breathe. And lastly, we should have a wide aperture. If you think about when we do the high intensity runs, like the 400 to 800 meter repeats, we have a very narrow field of vision. On these slow zone 2 runs, we should be comfortable and we should be able to utilize our peripheral vision and take in information around us. If you keep it easy, you can talk, nasal breathe, and have a wide aperture, it's likely that you're in zone 2 and you're going to get the benefits of the training. Now, before you leave, I want to cover some common mistakes that I see guys making that limit their progress. And number one is training too hard. With these sessions, you don't want to worry about your your pace. Sometimes if you're coming from an environment where you've been focused on driving down your running pace, it can be humbling to see what your zone 2 pace is. It might be 12, 14 minutes, and that is okay. Keep your heart rate in that zone, and that pace will come down over time. It's about training the energy system with these runs, not improving the pace. Mistake number 2 is not doing enough zone 2 training. Doing one short session a week won't really help much. You need consistent weekly volume to continue seeing real improvement. I recommend starting out for what's comfortable for you. So if it's 10, 15, 20 minutes, that's completely fine. And then every week, aim to increase the time that you're spending in zone 2 by about 5 minutes until you can hit 60 minutes of continued movement. And mistake number 3 is skipping zone 2 because it feels too easy and we don't feel like we get much from it. Some guys just avoid zone 2 because it doesn't feel hard, but that is the point. Zone 2 training helps your body recover faster and perform better when you need to go hard. It's about building your engine. The high intensity work is about fine tuning that engine so we can actually move faster. It also supports our training by enabling us to get more miles in, which is going to increase our impact resistance without fatigue accumulating that's going to undermine our overall progress. So start with 2 sessions per week and at a time based on where you're currently at. Use one of the formulas we discussed or simply keep intensity low, and over time increase your zone 2 training and you'll notice big improvements in your runs, rucks, and overall performance. Drop a comment down below with your current 2-mile run time and I'll help you improve it. And if you want a free 70-page ebook outlining our entire training methodology, check the link in the description. Train smart, stay consistent, and start building the engine that you actually need. I'll see you in the next one.